welcome everyone, and I know we are almost there. This Zoom fatigue only has 2 more weeks to well, 1 more week after today. So we're excited to be able to get back together in person, and I imagine that our numbers are going to go up dramatically as we do that. So, but welcome to everybody that's here, and hopefully we'll have a few more that join as we go. As we get started this morning, again, thanks to Kathy Allen for rounding up our volunteers to get us started each week. And I believe we have Carrie Ann for the invocation and Larry Wilson for the pledge this week. So.
All right, I'll start. All right, everyone, please bow your heads with me. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Carrie Ann. Well, as you guys know from the emails this week, we are sad to lose one of our longtime Rotarians. Judge Steve Franks passed away last week, and we just wanted to take a moment of silence to remember him. And then I know Craig has some words in the Care and Concern update about him as well. But let's just take a moment and reflect and remember on Steve Franks' life. And then Craig, Care and Concern updates.
Yes, sir. Nice segue there. Well, continuing the saga of Larry Elliott's wife, Helen, nothing really new this week. It looks like they're wrapping up their trip in Florida, and she should be continuing her chemotherapy starting tomorrow, and then getting on with this CAR T-cell therapy in the coming weeks here. So please keep her in your prayers. John Kilpatrick's wife, Tina, really good news there. She had a colonoscopy last Friday, and it showed no polyps, lesions, or questionable areas, and things they're very pleased, both Tina and John. No real news on Clay Robertson this week, so I assume that everything is scheduled for July 26th and a neurological evaluation on the 4 areas in his back. Ron Holt, really, I didn't have any updated information except that Ron went under the knife this past Friday, July the 16th, for his second go round to try to correct the injury that he suffered in a grievous bike accident back a few months ago. And we're hoping that this particular trip to the surgeon is going to do the trick ultimately. I have not talked to him this week. I just wanted to let him kind of get settled in. I know that it was a very pain-inducing kind of operation, and I'll speak to him a little bit later on in the week. And Broward Davis, no news this week, as I was only able to leave a voicemail. As far as Steve Franks is concerned, and thank you, Keith, for the moment of silence. And I believe everybody's seen Mel's notes over the last few days concerning Steve. We will miss his warm humor, his sharp intellect, and generous spirit. It was kind of funny as his health declined over the last few years. He was unable to attend our meetings. I talked to him, and he said, "You can rent out that seat over on Bob Felt and Mayor Bob Staten's table, but you can't sell it." And I'm happy to, just an example of the kind of humor that the man was capable of, even when he was hurting so bad. But I'm glad to say we didn't sell that seat, and he'll always hold a place of honor in our hearts. And I think that's just about it.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate what you do to keep track of the folks that are in need, and appreciate those updates every week. So.
Welcome.
And I realized I skipped over seeing if we have any guests with us. So let me ask that. Is there anybody with us here as a guest this week? All right, hearing none, it sounds like I didn't skip over anything. So I guess I'll carry on from what Craig was updating, and I will admit right up front, I am terrible with birthdays and anniversaries. I'm lucky to remember my wife's birthday. So I'm really bad about keeping up with this, but I'm going to try now. I got the list of birthdays and anniversaries that came out here recently, and I did want to highlight that we had a couple of birthdays in the group last week. Both Jill Wallen and Warren Spar had birthdays last week. We don't have any this week, so happy birthday to Jill and Warren in belated fashion. And last Saturday was Dawn and Julie Honeycutt's anniversary, and Sunday was John Kilpatrick's anniversary. So congratulations to each of them. And to kind of carry on from the care and concerns, today is Larry Elliott's 53rd anniversary. So shame that they're going through all of those struggles and challenges with her health, but we certainly congratulate them on 53 years together. So any that I missed that are coming up here in the next week or so? All right, good deal. Just wanted to reiterate what I put in my announcement in the or update in the e-blast that Mel sent out, and thank you, Mel, for continuing to send those updates out each week. But a big thanks to Lynn Marks, who stepped up after we made the appeal last week to be our Polio Plus lead. So I know Sarah said, hey, I've been doing this for a few years. I'd like to step down and look at other opportunities to help. And Lynn stepped right up to that challenge. And so we appreciate that. And we still have an opportunity. I mentioned the other big need that we have is for a sponsorship chair. So somebody that will work with the various organizations that have helped to sponsor us financially. We have different levels of partnership that are identified that you get various perks for contributing a certain amount toward that. And that's a huge part of our fundraising dollars each year. So I encourage folks to consider helping out with that. And we've got a pretty good system in place for reaching out to those folks and the timing of it all and such. And Maureen Adams has been doing that for a few years. She's happy to help transition that to whoever can pick it up. But we need somebody to step up. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Let Trish Luzzi or Richie Burlett, our fundraising leads, know, and we'll get you plugged in there. So thank you. And as I mentioned at the outset, just 2 weeks away from meeting in person at the Elks Club. So I just will remind you that we're going to try to start the program at noon or shortly thereafter. And so please plan to come early if you're planning to eat and spend some time connecting with your fellow Rotarians that we haven't been able to do in almost a year and a half. But I guess I want to follow on to Craig's humorous comment from Steve Franks, but I think at the Chariot, we kind of had our places where people were comfortable, right? It's going to be different at the Elks Club. The table sizes are going to be different. The orientation is going to be different. It's been a year and a half almost since we've been together. So I encourage people to branch out and to sit with various people and not always be locked into the same place each week. And that's particularly important as we try to welcome new people into the club. If we kind of have our places and we're always there and we're saving a spot for so-and-so and a new person comes in, they don't feel welcome if we say, hey, I'm saving this spot here for somebody else. So we want to try to encourage that newcomers can sit down wherever we happen to have them go, and that they can feel welcome and feel a part of what we do. So I do encourage folks to move around and to welcome folks and to leverage this opportunity that, here it's been so long. Let's take advantage of that and get to know people that we haven't known in the past. So that's my encouraging statement for the moment. So 2 more weeks. And if you have any questions on logistically how that's going to look, just let us know. We are having a small group, so I think it's probably just at this point Bob Felt and Laura and I are going back out there again today at 2 o'clock. If anybody would like to join us, I will open that up. But you meet us there at 2 o'clock, and we're just going to walk through again logistically what that's going to look like, how it'll be laid out, what things we need to consider, and hopefully get any last minute questions answered by the folks at the Elks Club. So. Any questions here that we need to address regarding that, or? Oh, Laura?
It's not so much a question, Keith, but just to echo what you said. I think that really helps to promote the inclusion and the diversity and helping everybody feel welcome. I know some members have had experiences where tables have been very closed off. So I think that that's great. Actually, in some of us that have been Rotarians for a while, I've visited clubs before where they actually fine members if they sit at the same table 2 weeks in a row, happy dollars, whatever. So it's a great way to raise money. And for our Sergeant at Arms who's online, he's got the Muppets background, if you haven't noticed. Anyway, so I just wanted to add kudos to that. I think that's a great suggestion.
What are you proposing, that we assign seats now?
No, we're asking that people don't take the same seat every week. Don't try to get out and reach, get to know other members, reach out to other members, and not so much. Some of us fall into the habit of sitting at the same table with the same people every week.
And I am very guilty of that.
We all are,
to do,
I
right?
think.
We all are.
Yep.
We're gonna
Yep.
mix it up.
We're going to mix it up.
Some years ago, I made up on a Rotary at a West Coast, Long Beach, California, as a matter of fact. And when you walked in, they had a fishbowl. You reached in and you pulled out a number and a seat.
That's
That's what you
creative.
said.
Yeah.
So it ensured on a weekly basis that there was a mix-up. And yes, I am totally 100% guilty. I have not moved from the chair that I am in since I first walked into the door of this club.
Hey, Larry, nobody wants to sit with you, okay?
Well, I understand that. It's kind of nice though to have a table by yourself.
I'll see to it that you get the table in the back with the candle.
By the way, if I may add something from a member who's been in Rotary for about 40 years. If we really want to get a lot of participation, something I found traveling around the world in some of the other clubs, those that serve booze are the highest attendance getter of all the clubs, okay? That's just to keep in mind if somebody wants to increase attendance. Eating out of a pub or something like that usually works out. However, penalties seem to run off members for a while. So I think anything that we can do to positively encourage people is great. Any penalties usually end up running some people off. All right.
Yeah. I do like Larry's idea, and maybe periodically we do something like that.
Yeah.
Just mix it up and have a random seat day. So
I think that the thing about picking up the name, I think that's a good thing.
Keith, if I might mention something, you mentioned I'm kind of taking over and helping with the membership to keep current members engaged and new members involved. We're very lucky last year to have quite a few new members that have never met half of us get involved right away. So we'd like to continue that. And I'd welcome any suggestions. I took some notes here today. If any of you would like to be on the membership committee, would like to bounce a few new ideas around once we start meeting in person, I'd really appreciate your help. And it's a fun group because I'm I'm kind of social anyway, and I enjoy meeting new members and finding out about them. And I think they really appreciate us taking them under our wing right away, because I think that's one of the reasons why we don't keep new members. They're not engaged right away. They haven't met many people in the club, so on and so forth. So please contact me if you're interested in being on the committee to bounce some ideas around, because otherwise I'll be calling you soon.
And Matt, it looked like you might have had a question or comment a moment ago.
Chief, will the venue have a video projector?
Yeah, I believe, Bob, we actually got the projector from the chariot, correct?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we haven't figured out how we're going to get that over there, how we're going to set it up. That's what we're going to look at this afternoon. But that'll be a standard piece of equipment when we need it for, we'll figure that out, Matt.
Yeah, if I may add something to that fishbowl that was brought up at another club I was a member of before I moved to Hendersonville, not by me. And it sunk faster than the Titanic. So, you know, that's two experiences. One, being a guest was fruitful. The second, people didn't like it.
Well, I really appreciate the dialogue. It's a great conversation. But I know Laura's got some folks lined up to talk today, so I want to keep moving forward. I just had two, maybe three other things on the list here real quick. So for me, one was just a reminder that the district conference is coming up August 13th through 15th. It's nearby at the Asheville Crown Plaza. So we will reimburse for registrations for that. So if you want to go on the DACDB and get signed up for that, please do. And hopefully we'll have a good showing at that event. And Larry, I know you wanted to make a cart update.
Very quickly, the Biogen Aldenheim drug, which as everyone knows by now, was rapidly approved by the FDA. Cleveland Clinic, who has received a cart donation in the past, and Mount Sinai have refused to allow the drug to be administered within their facilities because of the lack of testing. Two series of tests have been run. One was negative, one was positive, and there has been evidence of brain bleeding. The thing in the article that at least bothered me is the head of the FDA is investigating the relationship between members of the FDA and Biogen. And not just because of the Alzheimer's drug, but anything else we buy or prescribe. I find that a little scary when the head of the FDA thinks there needs to be an investigation on why a drug was rapidly approved. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that update, Larry. Certainly concerning. And Mary Beth, I know you wanted to make an update on Blue Ridge Honor Flight.
Yes, very exciting things. As you all may have heard, we're flying again on September the 18th and October the 16th. And so two things. One, we need guardians. So if you meet the criteria, meaning you're under the age of 72, you can push a wheelchair, you can lift over 50 to 100 pounds. We would love to have you as a guardian. We need some. And you can find the application on the Blue Ridge Honor Flight website, blueridgehonorflight.com, under applications and guardian. And you do need to be vaccinated. We are requiring vaccinations for this flight this year. The second thing is I'd like to get together my Blue Ridge Honor Flight committee so we can talk about orientation. Things might look a little different from that perspective this year. We're going to still have it at the operations center, but things have been maybe moved outside from a food perspective just because they've redone the whole inside of the operations center. So if we could meet just briefly after our first in-face meeting at the Elks, that would be August the 3rd. We're just going to meet very quickly after our meeting. So just put that on your calendar.
All right. Thanks, Mary Beth. Forward to that program getting going again. In what, a year and a half for that, maybe longer? 2 years. Good deal. All right, any other announcements that I missed before we go to Happy Dollars? All right, so who's happy?
I am very happy. This little man, it was released this morning from the NICU. He's gone into it. He's 7 weeks old, James, and they have what's called a transition room where he will be with his parents until they actually let him go home. And we don't know when that'll be yet. His due date was August 2nd. And traditionally, they usually kind of shoot for that, and it wouldn't surprise us. But anyway, I'll just show you his picture one more time. He's doing real well, and we're just very happy. So $20 happy dollars for that.
That is awesome. Good deal. Who else?
I'm happy.
Okay, go Susan.
20 happy dollars for me, and I will tell you why I'm so happy when I do my little shtick.
All right, we're looking forward to shtick. Good
I
deal.
have 10 happy dollars, 5 for the blue bucket, 5 because this is actually my 10th year in recovery from anorexia. And to coincide with that, I have a new job and I'm still a partner at Summit, but I am now the outreach specialist for an eating disorder program called Veritas Collaborative, which is based in Durham and Charlotte. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of traveling, but I'm in charge of contacting all the professionals, dietitians, and letting them know about our program and doing some teaching about eating disorders. So I'm thrilled and feel very blessed about that, and feeling like I'm drinking from a water hose right now, but it's going to be great. So thank you.
What an awesome way to be able to give back from the experience you've had to share with and help others. I think that's amazing. So good
Thanks.
deal. Melanie.
I've got 10 happy dollars for Mary Beth being recovery.
Carlos.
I add 10 more for the same reason.
Good deal. This is when we need
Melanie,
Ron.
send me the bill.
You should say this is when we need Ron Kaufman to do a little auctioneering and keep, raising the stakes here, right? So, thank you, Carlos. Appreciate that. And Mel. So. Any others? All right, fantastic. Well, Laura, I'm going to hand things over to you to introduce our internal speakers today and share a little bit more about the, classifications.
Well, thanks. Thanks, President Keith, and welcome Rotarians. Rotary has a long history of asking members to periodically give their classification talk. Some of us might know it as our vocational talk. But as members of Rotary International, we are assigned a classification when we join our club. In that classification, that vocation is listed on our badge. And I know it's been a long time since we've seen our badges, but I promise you, your classification is listed on your badge. We've got a large club, over 120 members. And being able to do your classification talk is really, in my mind, just a great way for other members to really get to know about you. I've been in the club just a little over 3 years, and there were so many of us, so many of you that I don't know a whole lot about. So I think my goal this year is to bring back classification talks periodically. And we would, again, of course, be starting to meet in person on August 3rd. A classification talk is your story, and we want to know your story. We want to hear it. I'm going to be contacting many of you throughout the year. This is something that you don't have to rush through, like when you go from your red badge to your blue badge when you're first inducted as a member. We ask you to give a 2 or 3 minute, brief synopsis, tell us. But the classification talk is a little more than that. It's a lot more about your story. It's not hard. You know the answer to all of these questions, and I will email this out collectively to the group so you have kind of a guideline. But I did send this to our first 2 speakers today, who I'm going to introduce in just a second. But it's not hard to give you classification talk. Tell us where you were born, where you grew up. These are some of the things that you might want to tell us about your educational background, places that you've lived. Tell us about your profession. Why did you choose it? Give us some of the ups of the advantages of the vocation that you chose, and maybe some of the more challenges in your vocation. Our vocations certainly change. I've been in healthcare for 41 years. And boy, what my vocation looks like today is a whole lot different than it was 41 years ago when I started. Tell us about your family. We want to know the personal parts about you, your hobbies, maybe something that someone doesn't know about you. When did you join Rotary? Why did you join? What are you looking to gain from Rotary? And I got to tell you, President Keith did a fabulous classification talk when he had us at his board retreat. He spent a few minutes, and you know, I've worked closely with Keith over the last 3 years, but I learned so much more about him. And I think that's a real important part as we engage our members and learn more about each other. So without further ado, we have two incredible members of our Rotary Club, Warren Spar and Susan Mangrum, who when I reached out to them, they were the first two people I reached out to. They were like, absolutely, I'm in. When do I do it? So what I'm going to do, we have Warren and Liz, Susan both on board. I'm going to ask Susan, let her go first. And then when she's done, then we're going to ask Warren Spar to do his classification talk. So Susan and Warren, do you need anything from me before I let you get started?
No, you just may need, since I can see your face, you may need to give me a high sign when I've talked long enough.
Okay.
You know, it's difficult for me to shut up.
I will. Well, I love hearing you talk. We all do. So I'm going to let you, without further ado, I'm going to let you get started.
Okay. I'm sure this is humorous, but this has to do with my $20 happy dollars. I'm sure some of you are looking at me going, oh my God, she looks older. That's because I've had a birthday, which President Keith forgot to mention. Secondly, I had an absolutely terrible car wreck. I walked away, but when the South Carolina trooper, who obviously had not been to charm school, came over and opened the door of my destroyed car, and he said, oh, I expected to find you dead. Well, I wasn't, and so I'm happy about that. And then the third piece is, in the last week, I have moved from my large place in Laurel Park to Plantation Walk to 1,500 square feet. Now, I know you may know that Plantation Walk is for a 55 and older community, but I did get a fake ID, and so they let me in. So everything is good. So there's a little background. You would think that moving across town would be very easy. It's called transfer of service. You would think that the utilities could make that happen. Well, no. So I moved in on Friday, just Friday, and I have no internet and I have no air conditioning. And that is why I look so much older than maybe when you saw me before. Now, moving on. I've had an interesting career, but they have all been communication based. I have a master's degree in English literature and a master's degree in journalism. So I was a high school senior and college English teacher and journalism teacher. And I enjoyed them tremendously, but I moved on. And then I got into marketing and PR. Loved that, but kudos to Chris and Mary Beth. That's awfully hard work. So I became a newspaper reporter. Now, I tie all of this in really with our four-way test. So how does true, fairness to all, building goodwill, and beneficial to all, how does that all tie in? Well, as far as I'm concerned, it worked well as a teacher. After all, you can't say much about Shakespeare. And the kids in my class might have thought it wasn't beneficial, but it is beneficial. It was kind of dicey being a newspaper reporter, but back then, as a newspaper reporter, it was who, what, when, and where. That was it. We didn't have an opinion. My editor said, if anyone wants to know your opinion, you will have a column and your name will be on it. Well, I certainly couldn't be a newspaper reporter today if I didn't, because even the weatherman has an opinion. So I will say that the journalism business has changed so that I don't always tell anyone that I was once there, because it was such a different profession. The career that was the most exciting for me was a corporate trainer, which once again brought everything together, and I was involved in communications. I was so fortunate. I worked in Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies, working with everything from supervisors, upper management to the floor in warehouses, working once again with communication. How to get along. This was back when emails were starting, how to write an email. I worked at Procter & Gamble, loved working at Procter & Gamble, worked with all of the different product managers who had to make presentations to upper management. And many of them were of a background that communication skills did not come easy to them. I'm convinced that I am the one that invented the elevator talk, because it was at Procter & Gamble that one morning when someone in one of my seminars came in and said, I can't believe it. I was just in the elevator with so-and-so, and he asked me what I did here, and he said, I couldn't remember. I just couldn't remember. So we started talking about the 2-minute, this is who I am, this is what I do. So that was a very, very exciting career. One of the things I did, do you remember going postal? I worked for the post office, and I traveled all over the United States to various large postal centers and did the why can't we just all get along stick. And I will have to say, after being with some of these folks, I figured out what the problem was, but they didn't ask me to solve it. They just asked me to teach communication skills. The most exciting group that I worked with was the Teamsters. I was in Detroit working with the Teamsters about the time that they were letting women into their exclusive group. So then I was talking about prevention of sexual harassment. Just thinking about shows you've seen on TV and the movies about the Teamsters, and perhaps their attitude about women being Teamsters, or the one guy who said, what do you mean I can't have a naked woman in my locker? That was, of course, meaning the calendar. But that was very interesting, and I'm very happy to say that I enjoyed it tremendously, and I was successful. Then my husband and I retired, and we moved here in 2000. And I became bored very quickly. And because of an interesting compilation of things that I had done and I knew, I went to work for Penny Insurance. My job here is as a senior advisor. So I work with Medicare. I work with retirement planning. Too bad Britney Spears didn't come to me, or she would not be in the situation she's in today. And back to how the 4-way test works in insurance, which is what I do now, is the fact that if you don't tell the truth, you get in trouble because insurance is highly regulated. Is it fair? Well, it should be fair. And does it build goodwill? All of those of you who's worked in a business that was word of mouth, then you know how important it is that you, in your responsibility to your client, that you build goodwill, you tell them the truth, you know you can be trusted. I tell people that I operate with the mantra is I have the Harris Teeter principle of operation. I don't want to go to Harris Teeter on senior day and have to hide from any of my clients. So truth and fairness are very important to me. And summing it all up, Rotary is very important to me because what we do in Rotary encompasses everything I've done in my whole life, and that is communicate honestly, fairly, and have a good time, which we do. The end.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. We're going to have a couple of minutes at the end for some Q&A, but what I'd like to do right now is to invite Warren Spar. Hi, Warren.
Hey, Laura. Thanks for asking me to speak. Those who don't know me, I've been a member of Rotary since about 2002. I grew up in rural Western Kentucky on a dairy farm. And anybody who's familiar with a dairy farm knows that this is a 365-day-a-year job. It's very confining. And this confining life had a great deal of influence on me because I wanted to escape that confinement and do something more interesting than milking cows 365 days a year. So with that, I decided I wanted to be an engineer. I decided I wanted to be an electronic engineer. And so in 1963, I graduated from the University of Tennessee with a degree in electronic engineering. And I was hired by what is now Lockheed Martin. At that time, it was known as the Martin Company in Orlando, Florida. It was located about 5 miles west of downtown Orlando. And at that time, Orlando was a small country town. There were literally orange groves in the middle of town. There was a lot of cattle raised in the vicinity. And Orlando was probably about the size, was smaller than Asheville today, if you can imagine that. There was no Disney, there was no Universal Studios, there was no SeaWorld, no International Drive that now surround my former employment. It was all swamp, literally. So I began my 36-year employment with Martin as an electronic designer, creating circuitry from individual transistors and resistors and capacitors on a program to develop what was known then as the Sprint missile. It was a part of the anti-ballistic missile system being developed in the early 60s to thwart the threat of Russian nuclear warheads coming and doing bad things to us. The work environment was very interesting then. The only people who had cubicles were the bosses, and the officers were the big bosses, and the rest of us sat in what was known as a bullpen with desks side to side, front to back, and facing each other. And my desk would face another engineer who was right in front of me. So this is how we did our work. And there's a lot of engineers there, and this was the early 60s. Everybody smoked, so by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you could cut the smoke clear with haze, and it's when we all didn't die of lung cancer, and probably some of us did. We had the computers that were available at that time were housed in a very, very large room, and they were very difficult to use and had minimal capability. And so their use was more for like system calculations and this sort of thing. The stuff that we did, the computations we did, we used a slide rule. So there were, we didn't have pocket calculators, at that time. So I worked on this program for about 5 years until I was given an opportunity to begin working on a new development program called SAMD. That's an Army acronym which stood for Surface to Air Missile Defense. And Martin was, or it was basically what is an anti-aircraft missile. Martin was a subcontractor to Raytheon and was responsible for development of the airframe and the launch equipment. And I was working on the launch equipment. And as the development of this missile progressed, Martin in 1973 lost one of its major contracts, one of the 3 that it had. And that was the Sprint missile, and that was shut down because of the SALT treaty, which limited all the intercontinental missile development, and there was now no longer need for this system. And so our employment dropped from over 10,000 to 3,500. And I was fortunately given an opportunity to, because the SAMD was progressing from advanced development into engineering development. And I was given an opportunity to move to Massachusetts as a company rep on this program. This was in the early 70s, 1974. So it was just prior to the time of the bicentennial, which was going to be kicking off in Massachusetts. And so Raytheon, feeling very flag waving and everything, decided to rename the missile Patriot. Now, lest you think they were flag waving too much, Army has a way that everything has to have it's an acronym for something. So this stood for Phased Array Track to Intercept with Target. So much for the flag waving. But moving there gave us the opportunity to experience a different cultural life. Living in New England, it gave us an opportunity to travel about the area. We were there in Concord, Massachusetts for the kickoff of the bicentennial, saw the bicentennial parade. And overall, we had a wonderful experience for that and made lots of new friends. And some of whom are in New England always made fun of my Kentucky accent. So after 2 years of living in New England, we were anxious to move back to Orlando, and I had the opportunity to do so. And at that time, I worked on a variety of advanced development programs. And then we'll fast forward into the 1980s, and I was given the opportunity to be the lead engineer on a program to develop and demonstrate the feasibility of a infrared search and track or an infrared radar. This was a technology demonstration program that to develop this infrared radar for use on the then being developed stealth fighter. This was the F-22, F-23. There was competition going on at that time. The good thing about doing the infrared radar was that you could the pilots could use this to find enemy aircraft without revealing their own position. As the radar would have to emit something, and once you start emitting anything from a stealth plane, it becomes very unstealthy. So with the efforts of over 100 bright young engineers, and the lead system person on this project was a young man that was 29 years old and was absolutely brilliant. We put together this system, installed it on a modified airliner, and successfully demonstrated the feasibility of the technology. This was probably the most rewarding, fun job I had in my whole career. We were doing some really neat stuff. We were doing flight test programs on this, flying this air. We put all this equipment on a modified airliner. And there were racks of equipment in there where the passenger seats were, and we had extended the nose of this airliner so it looked like Pinocchio flying through the air. So it was a fun job. I spent the remainder of my career in a variety of assignments, and I concluded with the development. I was the lead engineer on a research and development program for developing an new infrared sensor, which used at that time the technology utilized by computer chips, which would provide a low-cost alternative to the current technology. The current technology was very difficult. It had a low yield. You didn't get a lot of. You had to make a lot of them to get the amount that you needed. This would, by using the type of technology we were using, the yield went way up, the price would go down. However, there was a lot of resistance to this because people don't like to change. This works by fixing. What problem am I fixing? It doesn't work as well. There's a lot of things. So the program was started to conclude, and I realized that my fund meter in engineering had pegged. And I wanted to retire. I had worked with Lockheed Martin for 36 years. I'd been worked on some really interesting and fascinating things. I had a lot of good days and a lot of bad days, and the stuff that we did. There used to be in the missile world, a good day was when the flame came out of the big end. A bad day is when it didn't. We had both, and but I got to see some very interesting technology, work on a lot of things that were extremely interesting. Met some fascinating people. Got to travel some, and it was a good career. But in April of 1999, I was able to retire. I wanted to be able to spend some time with my family, enjoy my children. We have two sons. Liz and I have two sons, and we wanted to be able to enjoy being around them. And they were happily married and starting to have grandchildren. And after we moved up here, and we wanted to be able to, we knew that we were going to be grandchildren at some point, and we wanted to be able to enjoy them. And so we moved here in 01, and we had built a house here, and we wanted to enjoy this beautiful area that we live in and travel. I enjoy time with my wife, which my career did not always afford. And I pursued, I have had some interest. I like woodworking, and I like fly fishing, and I like to bake bread. And so I got, had a great career. I got to see meet some amazing things and some fascinating people. And at this time, when I retired, I was able to join Rotary, and that opened up another avenue of people getting to know some people in the community. I've always been very active in my church, and that was kind of the source of my friends. And I wanted one thing when I retired, I thought, it'd be nice to be in a service club to expand, our friendships, and that Rotary has done that for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in person again. That's going to be fun. And so with that, I will conclude my my talk here. Thank you.
Warren, thank you so much. Susan, thank you so much. We do have a couple of minutes, it looks like, President Keith. Does anybody have any questions, any comments for Susan or Warren? I would say if you do, let's just maybe unmute. Don't wait to be called on. Maybe you can unmute yourself. One thing I will say, Warren is I've gotten to know Warren quite well. He, excuse me, introduced, we didn't know each other in Orlando. He introduced me to a Holy Family Episcopal Church, and my husband and I came from the Orlando area. We're Episcopalian as well. And it's just been a great church community for us. And I'll tell you, Warren is being very humble when he talks about he enjoys woodworking. He is a skilled craftsman. The work that he does, I've seen it firsthand, is just, it's beautiful. Susan, I always love hearing from you as well. Love hearing your stories. My thanks to both of you. Am I missing anybody? That anybody has any question or comments?
I was just going to comment. This is fantastic, and man, I'd like to do more of this. It's great to hear those stories and to just hear the fascinating backgrounds that folks have. So thank you both for sharing. I did want to ask if Susan is planning to join the comedy circuit at any point in time here, because it's just.
By the way, I do want to mention something about Susan. She actually improved the relationship between my wife and I. So last time that we had an event at Dry Falls, she hit on me. And, when I got back home, I told my wife, hey, this lady at Dry Falls hit on me. And anyway, he had not been worried about losing me for at least the last 30 years, that really, added spice to our relationship. Thank you, Susan. The other career you can get into.
You are so funny, Carlos. And I don't know, maybe everybody else in the club knows that Warren and Larry Elliott are related to a degree. Did everybody know that? Anybody know that? So Larry, and correct me if I'm wrong, Larry's wife, Helen, is first cousins of Warren's wife, Liz. So there's that sort of connection, right, Warren?
Right. No, that's, we've, Larry and came here, we kind of convinced them to move here. They spent a lot of time, they wanted to move to the mountains from Nebraska. And unfortunately, they've had to move back to Nebraska for care. But they've enjoyed their time here, and I think they've been very productive in their time.
Well, one thing about Susan, if you want to have a good time, you need to have Susan in your group, even when you're working together on these awful fundraisers sometime, right, Susan? Yeah. So great talks. I think it's great. What classification are Warren and Susan under, Laura?
So Warren, your classification is engineer?
Engineering, aerospace engineering.
And Susan, your classification is listed as?
Call me for a good time.
Great, MB.
I was really worried about following her.
Of course.
Well, this is great, guys. I really appreciate it, and look forward to hearing more of these through the course of the year. Laura, thank you for pulling that together.
Well, thank you, President Keith. Thank you, Susan and Warren.
Thank you both. They were
I
great.
just have one last question. Is it just because I work with kids all day long that I am so enamored with Bob Felt's screensaver, The Muppets? He just sent it to me because I said, I love that, I want it.
Just love the way he appears in the middle of the moment.
Thank you, President Keith.
Thank you all, and I think that's a good way to close. So we'll close on our motto: service above self. Bye-bye all.